Lesson 12, Standard Deviation. Learning target, I can describe standard deviation as a measure of variability. In this lesson, we are introduced to standard deviation. In this video, we will learn how to calculate standard deviation using technology. But first, how can we define standard deviation? Standard deviation is a measure of the variability, or spread, of a distribution, calculated by a method similar to the method for calculating the MAD, mean absolute deviation. The exact method to calculate standard deviation is studied in more advanced courses. However, it is important to note that the standard deviation is based on the mean. We will be calculating the standard deviation using technology. The symbol shown refers to the standard deviation of a dataset. Let's practice using spreadsheet technology to calculate standard deviation. In Lesson 9, we learned how to use certain spreadsheet apps like GeoGebra to calculate statistics for us. Here's a review of how we can use GeoGebra to help us compute the standard deviation. After entering all the data in column A, click on letter A to highlight the entire column. The data shown was collected as a response to the question, on average, how many books did each student check out from the library this year? Next, click on the button that looks like a histogram. Then click on the one variable analysis. Then click on the sigma X button to see the table of statistics. The table of statistics we are about to see is the same table from Lesson 9. This time, we are going to focus on identifying the standard deviation. The table generated by GeoGebra provides many statistics. In Lesson 9, we discussed the significance of n and sigma x. This time, we want to identify the standard deviation of a dataset. The third row refers to the standard deviation of a dataset. The standard deviation is 4.0939. In future lessons, we'll learn how to interpret the standard deviation in context. For now, let's compare the standard deviation to the standard deviation of another dataset. Two libraries collected data for the question, on average, how many books did each student check out from the library this year? The standard deviation for each dataset is shown in the table. Considering each standard deviation, which library shows greater variability? Library B shows greater variability than Library A. This is because the standard deviation is large when the dataset is more spread out. This means the standard deviation is small when the variability is small. Let's discuss further how standard deviation is a measure of variability. Here's a dot plot that shows how much food in ounces each cat at an animal shelter ate for breakfast. In this example, the standard deviation is 1.194, and the MAD is approximately 1.09. We know standard deviation measures variability. Like the MAD, the standard deviation is impacted by the addition and removal of outliers in the dataset. The standard deviation would decrease if outliers were removed because the data in the distribution would display less variability. This means that the standard deviation would increase if the outliers were added because the data in the distribution would display more variability. The number of books read during the summer by two different classes are recorded in the dot plot shown. Class A is an example of a symmetric distribution, while Class B is an example of a skewed distribution. As we discussed when reviewing the definition of standard deviation, the standard deviation is calculated by using the mean. Based on this, do you think it is more appropriate to use with symmetric or skewed datasets? The standard deviation is more appropriate to use with symmetric datasets. In a symmetric dataset, the data is evenly distributed around the mean. Now let's reason with standard deviation given the two dot plots. Based on the distribution, is the standard deviation of Class B greater than or less than the standard deviation of Class A? The standard deviation of Class B is greater than the standard deviation of Class A. Overall, the datasets are similar. However, Class B had a student who read 8 books, while the greatest number of books read in Class A was 6 books. Therefore, there's more variability in Class B than Class A.